And we are made of it, and if we give submission, among our chances there's a chance we can choose. And if we take it by uncertainty's permission, then it's impossible to lose. Only time can write a song that's really, really real. The most a man can do is say the way its playing feels, and know he only knows as much as time to him reveals. Richard Hell. All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Rich, and this is Rich Talks Records, and we are today covering, this is the second Richard Hell video. Someday there shall be a third, someday off in the future. Right now, so we did Richard Hell in the 70s, which was a lot to talk about. And now we're going to do Richard Hell in the 80s. And Richard Hell, of course, made one album and one EP in the 80s. The one album being Destiny Street, and then, of course, there is the R.I.P. EP put out on ROIR, Roar. And I already made the acronym joke that I heisted from The Simpsons, so I shan't be making that again. So anyway, Destiny Street is one hell of a weird, long, winding path. Raw power and esque and smile-esque in its journey to completion. So, came out in 1982. It was recorded in 81, I think, towards the end of 81. It was like a 2 to 3 week span. Hell wasn't there for the first part of it. The Voidoids at this point was Robert Quine was still around, thank God. There was a new guitar recruit named Nausch, and drummer Fred Maher, who went with Quine over to be in Lou Reed's band. So Quine went to go make the Blue Mask, and then for 83's Legendary Hearts, Fred Maher was then Lou Reed's drummer. And in and around this time, and then certainly afterwards, the Voidoids, really as a live unit started to become more and more amorphous. Hell would just kind of take weekend gigs and pull people together. And sometimes Quine was or was not even involved. So yeah. And then I think 83, by 83 that was it. Hell was deciding to walk away. But at any rate, we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves. This is Destiny Street. This was the Razor and Tie reissue, and I actually had an earlier version of this that I'd picked up, I don't know, maybe 98, 99, and I forget exactly when I got this. This came out in 95. I definitely didn't. I didn't get Blank Generation until I think 97. So yeah, this I would have gotten in the early 2000s. But this version is great because it has very, very self-deprecating liner notes by Hell. And Hell is nothing if not free of illusions about himself. And so yeah, I kind of don't want to go into sort of the stuff, the self-critical things. I think that's ultimately, that's his tale to tell, and he has told it. He's been very forthright about that. I mean, again, there's not a lot of there's not a ton of self-delusion with him. So as much as I would have loved if he had made more records and continued onward, because I think that because he is a great musical figure, and I think that he could have gone on to do all sorts of interesting and challenging work. Everything he did was creative and interesting, and pretty much always at an extremely high level. And he was just such a positive influence on people, such an inspiration that you know, he inspired so much great art, and so much self-expression, or inspired people to go deeper into their self-expression. It would have been interesting. However, I think probably, given everything with him, I think he made the correct decisions for his health and his well-being, and ultimately probably his creative well-being as well, because he continues to be an excellent writer. And, you know, artists are not punch, you know, it's not a punch press. And it certainly doesn't owe the public anything. So you know, ultimately it's very, very good that he made the decisions that he made, especially if it keeps him, you know, literally alive. Now, in 2009, Richard Hell put out something called Destiny Street Repaired. I do not have a copy of that. I found it hard to obtain a copy back then. I know that it was available through his website, but I forget, there was some weird issue. Either it sold out very quickly. I remember trying to get a copy of it and was unable to. And what it was he had like a reference mix of the rhythm tracks, no vocals and no guitar solos, and got Mark Ribot, and I forget the other person's name, sorry, and recorded new vocals and new guitar solos over the top of the basic rhythm tracks. And when I do the third Richard Hell video, I will review that. I will talk about that in more detail. Somewhere down the line, that and Dim Stars, and then there's an interesting amount. There's maybe 4 or 5 songs, bric-a-brac from the 2000s, some of which is really fascinating and really idiosyncratic. And again, you really wish that he had gone on, because, for the reasons I just said. So that was Destiny Street Repaired, and then during the pandemic, this came out in 2021, and I did not find out about this until very recently. There's now this Destiny Street Complete, and along with all of the, and I talked about this in the last video, all of the extant voidoids 78, 79 recordings. There is a new version. What I would have to imagine is the definitive version of the album, after all these years. My understanding is that Hell obtained ownership of 3 of the 4 master reels of the album. So if he had gotten all 4, this would have been a clean sweep. It would have been very, very simple. But instead, he had 3 out of the 4, and that necessitated using 3 of the sets of tracks from Destiny Street Repaired. So it is a very odd hybrid of 1982 and 2009 recordings, combined with technology of the 2020s. So we'll be getting into all of that. Destiny Street was, you know, Hell was at the height of his, you know, very serious substance abuse problems, and you know, there's just a lot of issues going on all at once. So, you know, he had really resisted being pulled into the music industry. It wound up being a 5-year lag in between albums, which, especially back then, was still very, very rare. And, you know, now, Quine and Ivan Julian were a perfect symmetrical guitar team. That the degree to which even though Quine's kind of the leader of the two, you don't always even necessarily know who's playing, other than they would do hard mixing. But just still, if you're just listening to the record, you know, they are they are of one mind, one musical mind. And, you know, and I talked in the last video about how the Voidoids with Mark Bell on drums had really created their own musical language. And, you know, and it was a sophisticated, fascinating, idiosyncratic musical language. Fred Maher is a great drummer, but he is just a straight up 4/4 hard pounding rock and roll drummer. It's completely different than what Mark Bell was doing. Completely different. And Nausch is not in a guitar team with Quine. He is competing. You basically have two sharks like trying to eat each other. And there is, you know, one of the things, so Hell never liked the way the record sounded, and as the years went by, he did not have access to the tapes, you know, and otherwise he would have just remixed it far earlier. And he was, you know, not in a cogent state to make the kind of high level artistic decisions that he had made on Blank Generation. So anyway, the sound of Destiny Street, I completely understand. There are people who love it, who love the original. And the thing to me is, there's two things I think of when I listen to the original mix of Destiny Street, which they remaster as best they can on this. So this is disc 1, the original Destiny Street repaired on the second half of disc 1. Then Destiny Street, what are they even calling it? Destiny Street Remixed is on the beginning of disc 2, and then the 78, 79 recordings. So there's the story in the Lexicon Devil book about when the Germs went to go work on the Cruising soundtrack with Jack Nietzsche, and they were all excited to go work with like a real producer in a real studio. And Jack Nietzsche apparently took the faders and put the faders so that the faders were all like in diagonal lines, just like fucking around, like, so it was all these like diagonal lines. And at one point, apparently, I guess he turned to Pat Smear and said, "It's punk, it's supposed to sound like shit, right?" There's a little bit of that with this record, it feels. There's the other thing is, or another way you could think about it is people trying to make raw power by backing into it instead of running at it, sort of hoping they arrive at something that's the level of chaos and weirdness, but purposeful weirdness and purposeful intensity, but like kind of hoping that you stumble into it. Or another way of thinking about it, and this is a hell of a comparison. This is why you tune in to Rich Talks Records for these kinds of comparisons. If you're familiar with the second Old Dirty Bastard album, Blank Word Please, or I guess just Blank Please, Dirty was in jail when that record was made, and the record is made like around him. So there's his recordings. So almost all the songs take on a certain character after a while. There's like either like a vocalist or like some sort of sample and some sort of musical intro or hook, and then there's like Dirty shows up and is wild and all over the place and not terribly focused. In on that particular record, just as an aside, he's focused on assholes, literal and I guess figurative, and then like the hook or the music sort of chorusy part kind of comes and it fades out, and then the next song begins, and it's because the guy who it should be centered around is MIA. Both he was in jail, and then they weren't getting the best of him when they had him. So as opposed to Dirty's first album, which is a fucking masterpiece because it's focused and purposeful and has intention. So instead of, but he himself is wild. But for the second album, they attempt to sort of construct the wildness because, you know, the person who should be the head on the body is not there. There is no head on the body. So Destiny Street winds up sounding like that. It winds up, Richard Hell is weirdly undermixed. Also, strangely, sort of contradicting everything else. His bass lines are fucking fantastic. He's fucking playing the bass like he's fantastic. He locks in with Fred Maher really, really well. Like, huh? So anyway, but Hell is weirdly undermixed, and what you have is a very... I don't think they had invented gated drums yet properly, right? But it's a very prototypical or early 80s drum sound where the snare is just jacked the fuck up, and the drums are almost treated like the tambourines on American mixes of British Invasion records, like where the tambourine is louder than the band, like the weird stereo shit. Like it's like drums, and then you have endless layers of guitar overdubs just going at each other. Now, Robert Quine let loose should be the greatest thing in the world, right? However, it works against Quine's strengths because, as I talked about in the last video, Quine does compositions within songs, and just giving him free rein. Well, and here's another hell of a comparison. I think it's the reason why there wasn't like ever an Eddie Van Halen solo album. Eddie ultimately played for the song. He was a song person. He listens to the song and plays from there. And I think Quine kind of, with the leader of the band and the songwriter not in the studio or phoning in ideas, him and Nausch just layer a bunch of stuff and jack up the volumes, and it kind of goes for like a raw power sort of thing. But again, raw power was the result of like fevered fucking manic intensity. The other thing that's weird about this record, speaking of manic intensity, is a lot of the tempos are manic. And there, between that and the guitars, there's a lot of commotion, and you're not really sure why. It's it's almost like gratuitous violence happening in a movie or something, or it's almost like parts of season 2 of Twin Peaks, like, hey, this is crazy, so we're gonna have like we're gonna have Ben Horne reenact the Civil War because you never know what's gonna happen. Like, sure, I guess, So that's sort of sonically, it is. I agree with Hell. It is all over the fucking place and without intention. And what is interesting is he talked about how the songwriting and the whole idea of the songs on the album were supposed to be clean and elegant, and then you have this sonic fucking vapor soup just sort of rolling all over the place. So yeah, that's the situation that we find ourselves in with this strange album. But let's get into songs, shall we? So things open up with the kid with the replaceable head, which in another day and age would have been like a maybe like, I could see it being a left field punk or new wave hit in England. I think if the Nick Lowe version, if there had been sort of a proper push, and if Richard Hell had played ball in any fucking way, shape, or form, it could have been a hit single. This version is perfectly fine. I will say this about the the 2021 version. Nick Zinner, and what is the engineer's name? She worked on Bowie's Black Star, so it was Nick Zinner of the Yag, and what is her name? Aaron Tonkin. There's a really good interview with Aaron Tonkin that I will link below, where she talks about the specifics of the how the remix was achieved, and all of the technical kind of insanity that they had to deal with in the making of this thing. I will say, on the whole, the remixed versions of the original 1982 tracks, Richard Hell, Nick Zinner, and Aaron Tonkin knock it out of the fucking park every single time. The decisions that they make and the editing that they do is 100% right. And if they had all of the reels, you could sort of like call it and say it's this and Kill City that are the two greatest remix salvage jobs in the fucking history of rock and roll, and you can argue amongst yourselves as to which is the best one, done and fucking done. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So we're still sort of, this record still to some degree exists in the ether, unfortunately. So generally speaking, I'm going to try to not get too down the rabbit hole of comparing both versions, but, just I'm going to try to keep this understandable, because it's really easy to get into the weird minutia of this or that, and I do want to avoid that. It's why I'm trying to not touch the 2009 version in this video. So, Kid with a Replaceable had this version of it. I mean, I still think the version 82 and 21, the 21 version is better. It's that's the big thing with the 2021 mix. It inverts the problems of the 82 mix. Richard is foregrounded, his voice is strong and clear and right up front where it fucking should be, because it is him, he's the point. And the drums are mixed. The drums are mixed appropriately, yes, in the back, where they should be. And the other thing is, in the 82 mix, there's an 80s-ness or a creeping level of 80s-ness to the drum and bass mixing. Like I said, it's not gated, but it's that weird, thing. And these drums are just drums. And Aaron Tonkin talks a lot about the creation of the all-important drum sound. The drum sound really fucking changes the listening experience for the better. Her and Nick Zinner worked fucking miracles on the drum sound. It's a million times better. So, salute to them. The 21 is better than 82. It's far more the taste level is there. The editing level is there. It's what it should be. However, nothing is ultimately going to touch the 78 Nick Lowe version. That's where they got to the fucking essence of the thing. So the song is just a charming, weird, eccentric character study. It's Richard, playing with identity, playing with destiny, playing with predetermination. It's a great song, and it has a lot of ideas in a kind of almost like power pop kind of format. It's just a great, catchy, fun, smart, awesome rock and roll song. So that. Then we have, and then we get kind of straight into one of the peculiarities of this album. There's 10 songs and 3 covers, which seems a little weird given that there's a 5-year gap in between albums, and we know from the 78-79 recordings that there were some excellent songs that kind of just were lost along the way. But we get to the first cover, You Gotta Move. Kinks, is it off the second Kinks record? I dare say. Kinks cover, Ray Davies cover. It's really powerful. It's really good. 21 is better than 82. Again, it just brings the drums down to, because that really is the thing. Like, Fred is playing so manically that, and trying to pump energy into the music, that when he's mixed that loud, it just sounds like somebody. It almost it feels like an actor chewing the scenery. It just sounds deranged, but not in like an awesome way, but in a what the fuck kind of way. So 21 is infinitely better than 82. The guitars are grounded and strong, and the band fucking riffs and is powerful, and Richard Hell sings it fucking fantastically. He's a great rock and roll singer. His the vocals tend to be much lower in this era, and he just sounds fucking great. He's one of the great rock and roll singers. I certainly think of him that way. So it's fucking awesome. Then we get to the next cover, which is a complete mood shift. It is their cover of Going, Going, Gone. I still think I kind of prefer the 79 version. Again, as far as mixes go, 21 is better than 82, but the 82 mix there wasn't much to change about it. I mean, it was one of the better mixed songs, partially because in 82 it foregrounds, again, Hell, it's a great Dylan song from the Planet Waves album, and Hell really sings it beautifully. He's a passionate performer. He's a performer who exists on passion and exists on kinetic energy and full-on emotional intensity. And so he turns it. I mean, it's almost a soul song, or almost like a great country ballad. It's halfway between soul and country, and Hell just sings it magnificently. It's an amazing performance. And deeply moving, because this is a guy who's lived a rough life, and you can tell it. You hear it in the voice. So yeah, it's amazing. Then we have Lowest Common Dominator, which is one of the best songs from this period. It was written post 79. And it's a continuation of The Kid with the Replaceable Head. It's fucking fantastic. Or post Crack of Dawn. That's another. It's a fantastic song. Richard was really great at just writing these catchy, awesome, indelible rock and roll songs. He just had, he just had a great ability. Like, he could knock them out. It's, again, one of the reasons that it's frustrating that he didn't do more, because he could have made whole albums like this had he wanted to. But again, at least we got this. It's a great fucking song, and if you like rock and roll, I don't know how you couldn't like it. In this instance, 21 is one of the songs that that was not on the reels. So they use the '09 version, and we have the first appearance of the St. Agnes Memorial Hipster Choir. But it's used to sparing effect. So more about them later. That's not what they're called, by the way. I'm calling them that. And then we get to Downtown at Dawn, which is probably, I think, the track on here. It's probably the track on here that has the most issues, shall we say? Yeah. So Downtown at Dawn on here is nearly 7 minutes, and it is rhythm track wise, it is weirdly the most 80s, and weirdly the most sort of conventional sounding. It's hard to believe in parts of it that it is even a Richard Hell recording. The guitars, It's interesting because I feel had they produced it differently in 82, this would have been a masterpiece. Instead, it feels like the most unfocused because there just are long stretches of Naush and Quine just as two, fighting fish, just fucking going at it. And it winds up being the thing that is the most unfocused. And it's frustrating because it's an incredible song. There's a great song in there, and there's parts of the atmosphere and parts of the arrangement that work, but it's never quite there. It's all sort of, it's all it's all somewhere behind the vapor soup of what you're hearing, and it's really, really frustrating. If there was ever a song that would have been the ultimate song to benefit from what Zinner and Tonkin were doing, it would have been this. And unfortunately, they didn't have the reel for it. So they used the '09 version, and it's one of the songs that uses some of Hell's higher register and has some kind of melodic swooping in it that in 2009 his voice just wasn't suited to that anymore, and he hadn't really been singing for several decades. So the vocal, it's one of the lesser vocals in the '09 version, and unfortunately that's what they had to work with. They lop off almost like what 2 minutes of it or so. It's much, much shorter. It's much more concise. What they do sonically is a vast improvement. However, this song is kind of unfortunately lost to the ether. I'm wondering if someday, as extraction software gets improved, if someday there actually can be a real definitive mix of this, where they're able to extract Hell's 82 vocals out and put it over the rhythm track that Zinner, Hell, and Tonkin worked on in 21, because that is what ultimately would create the definitive version, and I think it would liberate, because the 82 vocal performance is fantastic. And unfortunately, it is an amazing song. It's, it could be an evocative fucking masterpiece that sort of grounds side one, and then is the mirror of it, or the counterpart to it, is then at the end of side two. But unfortunately, and I mean, that's one of the things I think about sometimes, even with Smile, or, I've gone down many rabbit holes over the years of doing the what if Jimi Hendrix had completed whatever it would have been called, Straight Ahead or First Rays of the New Rising Sun. And at some point there's this sort of, like, when you're down the rabbit hole of listening to all the alternate takes that the Hendrix estate has put out, at some point you just sort of, I never really fully finish one, because at some point it really strikes me like, he fucking died. Like, and there's this weird sort of, like, it just sort of dispiriting. Like, he fucking died. Well, there's nothing to fix, He fucking died. And then I go back and I just listen to the songs as they kind of are on the posthumous releases, Yeah. And that's sort of how I feel a little bit when it comes to Downtown at Dawn. Like, yeah, this is it. This is how it was. This is how it was made. And that's it. He had a lot of problems. That's it. So I don't know. It's a song that I struggle with, because, like I said, I would love to go dun da da. This is it. This is for the ages. Hurrah! And yet here we are. So it's still, like I said, I mean, it's there somewhere in the 82 version. And And then we have, and then I've never had this on vinyl, so I've never even seen a fucking copy of this on vinyl. So we flip the theoretical record over, and we get to Time. Time is Richard Hell's greatest song. It is his ultimate song. It is a statement for the ages. It is, I don't know. It is William Blake or Rimbaud level perfection. There is an elegance and timelessness and reality to the lyrics, and sense of purpose in the articulation. It's and then Hell sings it with passion and care, because he knows he's got a winner. He knows he's written something that that if there is any justice in this world, will last for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, because it is, to paraphrase Bob Dylan, it is a cast iron ballad. It's absolutely perfect. It should be a standard. It should be an American standard. It is perfect. It is perfect songwriting. The lyrics are, I mean, I don't know that you can really write better lyrics than that. I still think that the version released here and on the demos of here, it's all the same version. This and Destiny Street Complete have the best fidelity. That is a few beats faster, and there's a little bit of the Quine's opening figure is a bit more prominent, and just a little bit more elegant, and mixed kind of straight in the foreground. So it's just that much better. I still go to the 79 version, which I guess came out in 1980. So, that's very easily found. For on the 82 version, it's played more for ballad effect. It's a little slower, and Richard refers to it in his 90s liner notes as plotting, but still majestic. I wouldn't call it plotting, but it's all of it's majestic. All of it's majestic. In this case, the 82 version was actually mixed fairly well, kind of like Going, Going, Gone. Like, they sort of knew what to do when the song had really coherent focus. They mixed it. They mixed it more coherently. But that being said, the 21 version, I mean, if that's what you're going to go with, that's probably better than the 82 mix. But yeah, I mean, it's an absolute classic, and Quine's solos are like some of the most elegant guitar solos in the history of rock and roll. They're winding, gorgeous passages that are like the equivalent of the musical equivalent of like gigantic like tracking shots up the side of a mountain, like gigantic widescreen tracking shots of a mountain. Yeah, like soaring over mountains. That's what Quine does musically. It's perfect. It's perfect. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, I was intimidated to even talk about the song because I'm not. I don't know. I don't feel I'm able to say it properly. But yeah, I mean, listen to it, for Christ's sake. It's as good as recorded music has ever been. And then there's I Can Only Give You Everything, Trog's cover. Trogs do a great version. MC5 did a great version. Before they really started writing too many of their own songs, R.I.P did a great version. And Richard Hell does, I mean, this is an intense blowout meltdown, and apparently, according to the 90's liner notes, Richard, I guess, had knocked something over, and the engineer came in and started kicking over a garbage can. So you can hear sort of things falling over, and I don't know about breaking, but you can just hear things being knocked over at the end of the recording. The 82 version is fine. It's the weird, too loud drums, too quiet Richard, and like guitar fighting fish fucking thing. It works to the effect that it wants to achieve to some degree because it's so manic and nuts. On the other hand, the 21 mix does something, again, inverting, does something fucking awesome. And that is, as the song goes on, and Richard sort of goes into this breathless freak out, just as he's exhausting himself and expending all of his energy. They actually mix the band down, and it's just Richard and drums. And it's that much more dramatic and that much more intense. So the 21 mix is the one. It's awesome. And it's subtly the single best mix on the entire thing, I would say. So, good job. And then, goodness, my eyesight. And then there's Ignore That Door. Ignore That Door is a feverish, very intense, it's the closest the album comes to sort of raw power level, what the fuck intensity, purposeful what the fuck intensity. And not just we're going to do crazy shit and hope that it works, or we're going to fill this up with crazy shit. Ignore That Door is an incredible piece of songwriting. It is a, it's a warning. I mean, here's another hell of a comparison. No, I'm not going to do that. Never mind. It's an amazing, amazing song. And it is a feverish anti-suicide, anti-self-destruction screed from a man who knows. And from a man who, not that long from now, will fucking turn it around. Thank God, But it's absolutely fucking amazing. And, hard-bitten wisdom. It's a fucking guy you should listen to, and his vocal is just scorching. Like, this is one of the times, like, he doesn't get this manic on Blank Generation. I mean, this is real feral intensity. And it works on the 82 mix. The 21 mix just simply highlights how awesome it is. And so, the 21 mix is better than 82. However, 82 is one of the only things that really where the vapor soup kind of works, but it works all the better without it. But it's one of the only times where it's effective, for whatever that's worth. Yes. And then there is Staring in Her Eyes. So, Staring in Her Eyes. I think one of the lesser songs from the 79 recordings. Here, it might be my least favorite song here, but the 82 is better than 79. It's more fleshed out, and it's a far, far better performance from Hell. However, the mix does it absolutely no favors. It would have been interesting to see what Zinner and Tonkin could have done with that, but this is the third song that they didn't have the vocals for, or guitar solos. So we get the 09 version, and Hell's vocal is actually an improvement on the 82 version. Hell's 09 version, partly because where you could say that his age works against him on Ignore That Door, this time it benefits him. It really sounds wise. It sounds bemused, that he made it all through. It's poignant. It's beautiful. And it's never been one of my favorite songs, but god damn it, the 2009 version has me convinced. There's only one little problem, and that is, for whatever the fuck reason, the St. Agnes Memorial Hipster Choir makes a really weird brief couple intrusions on the chorus. I don't know why they're there. They don't sound terribly great. It's a needless piece of sonic detail that does the thing no favors. And Hell's vocal performance really gives you everything you need, and you really find yourself pulling for him and feeling for him, and yeah, it's so, I don't know, a qualified success perhaps. And then we end the album with Destiny Street. The original song, it's interesting that it's the last song on the last Richard Hell album, because it feels like a capper of the agoraphobic, self-immolation stuff, that had started on the first album. It feels like the capper. It feels like somebody who maybe hasn't turned it around yet, but is going to. The sun is shining. It's the next day. The night is over, and he meets himself, but even that, the way that's played, the meeting of the selves 10 years apart, it's just such a great sort of abstract tale, and again, the music, it's this kind of New York funk groove, like slowed down, but it just really works, and it really puts it's like the perfect setting for Hell's sort of spoken word, flights of fancy, and it's really charming, and eccentric and idiosyncratic, but in very winning ways. And the 82 version works. The 21 mix fucking blows it out of the water. It's about 40 seconds longer, a minute longer. And Quine, they inverting the mixing issues from 82, it really pushes Quine forward, and absolutely soaring, gorgeous guitar, some of his best guitar playing on the whole thing, because he's playing for a purpose, and just as he was playing for a purpose on Time, or Ignore That Door for that matter, this is just it's just magnificent, and it ends the album on a weirdly hopeful or optimistic and, dare I say, graceful and dignified note, because it's still acknowledging its own messiness and its own failings, and and its own very humanly fallible nature. But it's fucking great, and that ends Destiny Street. It's a wild ride. I think that if you're going to get it, I think you are foolish if you do not pick this up. It's very much worth it. This is infinitely better than this, simply because if you go for this, you get all of the awesome stuff from the late 70s, and that alone should sell you on it. But the Zinner Tonkin remix does this album a hell of a lot of favors. And like I said, I wish that they had all 4 reels, because then case closed. You know what I mean? Like, it would just be that. But that being said, I don't know. Maybe there is another weird layer of poignancy that his 2009 self. And maybe given the song Destiny Street, maybe I should listen to it more, and I'll start to hear it as like some weird meta commentary on itself. But I haven't taken it that far yet. But so that is Destiny Street, and Richard was kind of winding things up for the 80s, but there was still one more release, and we will get to that right now. Richard, there's on the Time compilation, there's a weird 1983 version of I Can Only Give You Everything. Who's playing on this? I don't know who any of these people are. Mike Baumgarten, Jeff Freeman, and Charles Wood. And it's from Atlanta, and he refers to it as being whacked out. The Baumgarten, Jeff Freeman guitar duo sound as if the only frame of reference they have for playing rock music is having listened to Destiny Street again and again and again. They are playing at each other. It is whacked out. It's kind of amazing, but also kind of like, what the fuck is this? In a good way, but far more substantial. And this is what originally composed a part of the R.I.P. Aurora was is it Reach Out International Records? Is that what it stands for? I think. Don't quote me on that. It was a cassette only label in the 80s. They put out cassettes records by Richard Hell, obviously, but they did the Flipper Blown Chunks live album, and they did the first Bad Brains, the first cassette. So yeah. And it was originally titled R.I.P. R.I.P. has been then converted into this. And this is the only place where you can get these recordings, and they are extremely worth it, I think. And it's a perfect epilogue. If this was it would be one of the best epilogues ever. But then there's a little bit of the 90s and a little bit in the 2000s to help round out the story. And like I said, someday that will happen. The 1984 recordings in New Orleans, and I want to get this right. So we have Hell singing, playing bass. We have Nick Sanzenbach on saxophone, piano, and drums. Pete Laban on guitar. Gerald McCollum on guitar, and Ziggy Modolesti on drums as well. They do 4 songs in this lineup, and these 4 songs are absolutely fascinating and extraordinary and wonderful. There, first of all, is I've Been Sleeping on It, which apparently Quine did some guitar overdubs on as well. I've Been Sleeping on It is a wild song. It's halfway, it's somewhere between Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs and half Japanese, or Tav Falco and Panther Burns, or it's wild, weird, wiggy. It's a strange song, but in the best way, because it's just it is just a great rock and roll song, but it just of a particular variety. And yeah, it's so cool and just unlike anything else he's ever done. There, the saxophone is really prominent, and yeah, this just has a completely different feel and a totally different ethos. It's hard to believe that this is 84. It feels like something he would have done after 15 years of silence. He seems almost like a completely different artist. None more so than the next song, Cruel Way to Go Down, the Alan Toussaint song, which Richard sings as, this sort of spectral piece of night vision terror that is mostly falsetto. It's an arresting vocal performance. It's a beautiful song, but a really arresting vocal performance that finds some sort of space somewhere between and between the saxophone, the kind of freeform saxophone playing. It's somewhere between the second Flipper album and like Heaven, or Worried About You on side 2 of Tattoo You. It's a strange one, but strange in a very, 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 very beautiful way. Then there was The Hunter Was Drowned, which is apparently inspired by a book by Carl Jung that he was reading. The Hunter Was Drowned is just it's a fucking classic. It could have been like it could have been a hit single in a different world, or in some alternate version of the 80s, or maybe in England. It's just it's such a, the I've been sleeping on is so idiosyncratic. It's a little, it's akin a little bit to some of like Iggy's Soldier. It's got a sort of a Loco Mosquito kind of thing going, but yeah, The Hunter Was Drowned is just a straight up classic, and it does remind me of that period of Half Japanese again, partly because of the saxophone, but partly just the overall just vibe of it. And even though this is New Orleans, it still feels very New York to me in a way, and of that very specific kind of era of New York. It's a really fully written song, and it's a little classic, just tucked away at the kind of towards the end here. It's just amazing. It is a great song. If you're going to listen to one song from this period, make it that one, and then you'll want to listen to the rest. And then it ends. Kind of only as a can. It ends with a weird little rock and roll fragment called "Hey Sweetheart" that it doesn't even make it to 30 seconds, and is almost more of an intro than an actual song. It's cool. It's but it barely exists, and then that's it. He doesn't record again until '92, when he hooks up with. I've already talked about that with Thurston Moore, Steve Shelley, and Don Fleming, and forms Dim Stars. So at some point we will get to that. But this has been it's been a wild ride through the 70s and 80s with Richard Hell. He's one of my all-time favorites. I think that he's one of the absolute best, and I wish that he'd made more music, because he was amazing at it. And even this end stuff at 84 is just fucking awesome. And he was always creative, and he still is. He's a writer, and he actually just put out a new book, which I need to order. So it's a new book of poems. So. And he's an amazing writer. The Hot and Cold book that I held up earlier has, if you are interested in Hell, that was why I held up those two books. I think his autobiography is great, and he has an intensely interesting life. So that's well worth reading. But if you're interested in reading Hell, get Hot and Cold, because it kind of contains everything: the travelogues, the diaries. There's some of the collaboration poems, like with Tom Verlaine, song lyrics, essays, reminiscences of Dee Dee Ramone and Johnny Thunders, and it's an amazing book. Plus, you get to see a naked picture of him, and who doesn't like to see naked pictures of people, right? I mean, come on, land of the free, home of the brave, right? So yeah, He is a true, free, unique, amazing, creative voice, and we're just lucky to live in a time where we were able to see him. And from the first time I ever saw him in the History of Rock and Roll documentary that I would have seen at the end of 1995, he had popped up in the Rolling Stone album guide, which is sort of vaguely how I knew him. The only other way that I knew him before that was Kurt Cobain famously didn't know who Robert Quine was, and a journalist was giving him a bunch of shit for being a punk rocker who was unaware of Robert Quine. And so that would have been the first time I ever saw the name Richard Hell and the Voidoids, I think. But from the first time I saw an interview with him, I was like, wow, I really like this guy. This guy's got something very special. And when I did eventually start finding his records, I was proved correct. So this has just been a salute to somebody whose music and ideas and art and writing has made my life cooler and better. I hope you've enjoyed this voyage into this odyssey into the works of Richard Hell. And hope you're all doing okay out there. Thank you for watching if you've watched all of this. And, like and comment and subscribe and all of the, revel in the splendors of YouTube. Let's revel together, shall we? Yes. So, let's special together every day. And with that, I will see you all next time then, right? Okay? Bye!
You just finished watching Richard